Do you want to improve at a quicker pace? Check out the GitGud course. Instead of just understanding concepts, you'll learn how to implement them directly into your driving. What makes it effective is the approach and practical drills. Together, we're gonna focus on breaking down those complex concepts into small digestible bits that are simple to understand. Everything from the course was tested and refined during the years in coaching sessions, so what I ended up with was the ones that I saw were the most effective. Let's elevate your racing skills together. Now for the track guide. Before starting, if you like this channel, if you like this content and if you learn something out of it, feel free to give it a like. It will help me a lot to push videos like this to more sim racers. Now going into the track guide itself, turn 1 is gonna be flat, there's nothing special, but you really want to get close to this curb right here. And whenever we're preparing the braking zone for the next corner, what I use as reference for braking is the visual cue of me seeing the curb into the distance. So right now I'm looking at this curb, and the moment that I'm able to properly see it, even from the back part of it, let's say, so whenever I'm able to see it completely, that's where I'm applying the brakes, and I'm looking at the apex right now because I want to brake and I want to still hold the brakes while I'm doing this long sweeper. The common mistake will be if in between this corner and the next one you will be hitting your throttle. Instead, we want to stay all the time on the brake, so we shoot the car with a lot of speed into those sequence of corners, and we manage the speed with the trail brake and the rotation so that we're not needed to put the throttle down. So still braking at this point, still on the brakes, downshifting to third gear, and very close to this curb. You want to kiss it in the bottom part of it. Now still holding the brakes, I'm dropping it a bit right now. I'm just dropping it to 0 for a brief moment, because whenever you're going into the straight line zone, you might feel that if you still hold the brakes, the car speed will be too slow. So you're managing the speed of the car with your brake release. So right now I'm reapplying it, and I want to barely touch this curb, and from this angle onwards I want to turn, but again I'm braking into the corner and I'm downshifting to second gear. I'm hitting this curb as well, and now I'm just back on throttle and using all the track. So as you can see, this braking zone into the first sequence of corners, turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, it's all about brake. Then we go into the standard elevation without you going uphill, then we release the brakes, and then we brake again before turn 3, and then we put the power down. So that's the rhythm of this sequence. Now going into the next corner, so this is gonna be flat, nothing too special, but you really want to cut the grass right here. There's a bit of dirt around those tracks, and you want to put your tire on it. It's gonna help you shorten the distance. Now this corner right here, the next two corners can be quite tricky. So first of all, I am turning and braking at the same time at the beginning of the right curb. I want to still hold the brakes and trail brake up until I hit this curb around here. And whenever I'm hitting it, I'm putting the throttle down and I'm letting the car roll wider. In fourth gear, I should have braked just a bit more in this lap. Far from a perfect lap, but I should brake just a bit more, putting the throttle down. And right now the braking point, this is gonna be super tricky because you can't properly see your corner on the left because of this pillar. So what I'm using as reference for braking is this pole right here. Right is barely visible. Right now is barely visible, but whenever it starts to appear in my windscreen, and whenever it's in the middle, like right now it's in the middle of my screen, I just wait a couple more seconds, like right now, just for it to go a bit more towards the right side. So it won't be completely in the middle of the screen, it will be just a bit on the right. And whenever I have this light pole aligned with just a bit, not the center, but just a bit right, that's where I'm applying the brakes. And I want to brake and barely use this curb. Don't use it more than this because it can make turning a bit sluggish. In third gear, you will turn more and more, and before touching this curb, you will get back on power and go over it like this. I've seen different couple of lines that can both work, even if you go around it, but from a later angle it can work. But this is something that I'm doing, and I think it's best because you can really put the throttle early. And as you can see, I'm still gaining here on the exit. I just had a bit too much wheel spin and too many corrections with the throttle because it wasn't quite ideal. But the main idea is that you really want to cut that curb as much as you can from a late angle. Now from this part onwards, I'm braking in the middle of the curb and I'm downshifting to second gear while I'm putting the power down before I hit the curb. That's super important. So around here you want to be on throttle at this point. So even before you hit it, you go back on power because this is a long straight. So the earlier you're gonna be on power, the more time you're gonna gain. But don't go all the way wide, so don't use all the curb. Don't put your left tires here on the green because you will lose a bit of time whenever you will go over these curbs because those are a bit tall, so don't use all the track here. Next corner, it's a bit simpler, but I do a small mistake. So braking point for me is not in the middle, but let's say the 70 meter. So right now I'm applying the brakes. I want to brake in a straight line first. I want to maximize the efficiency of the brakes. So don't brake and turn at the same time for this corner. This is like a low speed corner. We'll go to second gear here. So brake and stay in a straight line, then turn more and more and more, downshifting to second, and I'm cutting this a bit too early. You want to cut it like this, but from a later angle. So at this point in time, I should have just stayed a bit more straight and then turn. So I turned a bit too early into the corner. You're looking at this yellow anti-curbs. You want to put your tire on it because it won't be an off track. You can cut them like this. But if you're gonna cut them a bit too early, you will run out of track and you will need to do corrections under throttle here. So you know you have a good corner if you're going 0-100 without corrections and you just need to turn a bit later. Now this corner right here, I'm barely getting into fourth, and the moment that I'm close to the beginning of the curve, the white part of it, I'm applying the brakes, and I don't want to brake super heavily. I want to release quickly because I want to be able to cut this curb and put the throttle at the moment that I'm cutting it, like this. Now the next corner, you have to brake here a bit softer than you think. I'm braking in the middle of this curb or slightly the beginning, and I especially don't want to brake super heavy, so I'm forcing myself to brake softer in second gear and just cutting the yellow anti-curbs again. You want to cut this corner, the more you cut the better it's gonna be, and use this exit road. And super important, I think if you start with the mindset that you can brake earlier than softer than you think, it's gonna work a lot better. Same for this corner around here, braking point the middle of the curve or slightly the beginning, but you can really push it a bit more towards the middle because what happens here for me, I go over it. So avoid that, don't go over the curb, it's gonna delay your throttle application and there's a fair amount of straight up until the last corner. So what I would suggest here is brake a bit later than what I'm doing, almost the middle of this curve, start braking and turn later into the corner without going over the red sausage curve. It will allow you to carry a bit more speed, it will allow you to have a better exit. And now for the last corner, cutting here so we can have the car aligned to the left side. It still won't be perfectly aligned, but we're trying to make it as best as we can. Beginning of the curve here is where we start braking, and you have to turn more into the corner, more than you think. So in this case I missed the apex, but what I'm doing is I'm trying to get to second gear, and what I should be doing is I should have cut that beginning of the curb, like this part around here where the curb is not that tall. That's where you want to put your tire. In my case I missed the apex and I go around it, so definitely there's 1.5 tenths just by going closer to the apex. Focus on that, so you'll have to brake diagonally towards that curb and then put the power down nice and early because we have again a huge straight. But in short, that's a track guide for GT4 with this week Navarra. This is a new track, so we have to stay a bit more seasoned on it to get a bit more experience. This was my lap, not a perfect lap, but if you want to accelerate the progress, if you want to learn at a quicker pace, if you enjoy this track guide, you can also check my course. It's in the video description. I think it's a great value. But anyways, thanks for watching, thanks for sticking around, and looking forward to see you in the next track guide. Bye bye.